Hey guys, tonight we're taking a stroll, not through a dreamy countryside or a fantasy castle, but straight into a medieval bedroom that smells faintly of boiled onions, damp straw, and maybe a hint of despair. You're lying on a creaky wooden bed, rough blanket twisted around your legs, and something feels off. Your throat scratches like you swallowed a pine cone, your head pulses, and someone nearby is muttering a prayer you really hope isn't for the dead. Congratulations. You just woke up sick in the year 1450. No antibiotics, no paracetamol, and you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when we're falling asleep together. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The morning chill seeps through the wooden shutters. There's no glass, obviously. Too expensive, and anyway, airflow is the poor man's doctor. A soft cough escapes your lips and you clutch your throat. It's raw. You swallow, regretting it instantly. And then it starts. The creeping realization that something is not right. Not the usual aches from hauling firewood, or the sniffles from sleeping near the drafty wall. This is different, heavier. Your family notices too. Your mother gives you a suspicious side-eye before leaning over and pressing the back of her hand to your forehead. Her face drops a little, a sigh, then a muttered, "I'll fetch the herbal compress." Translation: you've officially become today's main event. The bed you're lying on, stuffed with straw, itching your back in places straw should not reach. The pillow, more like a sack of lumpy peas. But hey, you've had worse. Remember when Uncle Giles got dysentery and everyone had to use the outhouse behind the chicken coop for a week? You do. Unfortunately, you do. There's no such thing as calling in sick. You're at home, but everyone is. Work and life are the same space. There's a pig snoring under the table and your brother is sharpening something way too close to your feet. The only relief is that you're not expected to help with chores today, which is the closest thing to paid time off you're ever going to get. The air smells thick, burned peat, unwashed humanity, and the faintest hint of rosemary from a bundle hung near the door to ward off corruption. You close your eyes and breathe carefully, not deeply. That's dangerous. Deep breaths were thought to invite in bad air, miasma, the invisible evil fog blamed for just about everything from headaches to divine judgment. According to medieval belief, illness wasn't just biological, it was moral. If you're sick, maybe you sinned. Or maybe the town baker looked at you funny last week and hexed you. Who knows? That scratch in your throat grows into a cough. Now your little sister's watching you from the corner, like she's waiting to inherit your blanket. Your father pretends not to notice, but he shifts uncomfortably in his chair. You're not dying yet, but you're clearly out of warranty. You try to sit up, then lie back down just as fast. Head rush, maybe fever. A nearby cat meows and leaps onto your stomach, kneading you like a sourdough starter. You're too weak to shoo it off. Congratulations again. You're now officially a warm, flat surface. Historians still argue whether daily village life made people more immune to disease, or just more resigned to it. What's certain is that getting sick in 1450 doesn't just affect you. It affects everyone. Sickness is communal, messy, and strangely theatrical. If you so much as sniffle too loudly, people start whispering, fetching charms, offering wine, or slapping leeches on your feet. There's no quiet convalescence. Your body becomes a group project. You hear clanking in the corner. Your mother is heating up a metal ladle to sterilize the poultice cloth. It won't help, but it will smell strongly of onions, which is at least comforting. In a way, you try to count the wooden beams on the ceiling to stay awake. That's when the chills start. Slow at first, then racking. You curl tighter, wrapping the blanket over your shoulders. Your older brother mutters, "Here we go again," and starts stoking the fire. You're either about to recover, or launch into a multi-week journey that ends with a candlelit procession and your name scratched into the church's wooden ledger. People in 1450 understood sickness through patterns. If your cousin got better from a certain tea, that tea is now gospel. If someone got worse after bathing, bathing is now forbidden. It's less about science and more about stories. One family swears by garlic-soaked linen, another by goat urine. There's no consensus, only conviction. By late morning, your entire household is invested. Your aunt has arrived with a crust of mouldy bread she swears pulled the death out of her neighbour last spring. The neighbour did, in fact, survive. Whether it was the bread or divine indifference is still hotly debated. You don't argue. You chew slowly, suppressing your gag reflex, and chase it with tepid ale. You drift in and out of sleep. Not restful sleep, but the twitchy, sweaty kind where your dreams involve drowning in cabbage stew or running naked through the parish festival. When you wake, someone's pouring a warm cloth over your chest and whispering the Lord's Prayer in Latin. You catch a whiff of camphor. That means someone thinks this is serious. And it might be. You're sweating hard now. Your hands tremble when you lift the blanket. Your legs ache. And just when you think this day couldn't get any more cursed, the village crier passes outside shouting something about a hog theft and moon omens. You shut your eyes. This is going to be a very long week. The moment you manage to doze off, a sudden clang jolts you awake. Someone's knocking at the door with the force of a tax collector in a bad mood. Outside, your uncle is yelling something about the foul air and insisting your windows be opened wide before the rot settles in. The shutters groan as they're flung open. A cold wind rushes in, along with an enthusiastic gust of village perfume, damp hay, pig droppings, and that one guy who hasn't washed since Easter. Welcome back to 1450, where the only thing more contagious than illness is bad advice. You slowly prop yourself up and glance outside. The view is medieval. Mud clings to everything, thatched roofs drip with yesterday's rain. A trio of geese waddle by like they own the place, and near the town's central trough, 2 children are poking a dead frog with a stick. Sanitation is, let's say, more of a concept than a practice. You live in a village where waste disposal means tossing it out the window and praying the wind favours your neighbour's direction. Latrines? Only if you're fancy. Otherwise, it's a designated corner near the goat pen, the same corner where herbs are sometimes dried. Don't think too hard about that. You shuffle to the doorway, clutching your blanket like a makeshift cloak. The ground squishes under your bare feet. You don't need a thermometer to know you're still feverish. Everything feels like it's coated in a layer of beeswax. The smell of the village hits you harder today. Your nose, half stuffed from your cold, still manages to detect every whiff of decay, dung and desperation. The roads aren't really roads, more like flattened mud paths where cart ruts have collected enough water to qualify as public bathing options. Chickens strut confidently across the path, pecking at things you'd rather not identify. One of them eyes you. Suspiciously, you eye it back. A standoff ensues. In this village, nobody really knows about bacteria. Germ theory won't be a thing for another 400 years, but everyone knows the streets themselves feel like an infection waiting to happen. People walk with purpose, stepping over puddles of questionable origin, muttering blessings under their breath if they pass someone coughing. Historians still argue whether medieval people truly believed in cleanliness as we know it, or just feared upsetting whatever invisible spirits were clinging to their elbows. What's certain is this: cleanliness was seasonal, optional, and often spiritual. You might scrub your hands before a holy day, but daily hygiene. That's for rich folks and heretics. You pass old Marjorie's hovel. She's out front skinning a rabbit and singing something that sounds a bit too cheerful for this hour. She pauses when she sees your flushed face and says, "Bit of the sweating sickness," then spits twice and waves a smudge of rosemary in your direction. That's the village version of a prescription. Everyone's got an opinion, and everyone shares it, freely, loudly, whether you want it or not. Further along you spot the town's public well. It's surrounded by 3 women gossiping at a volume birds can hear. You catch your name. One says, "That boy always looked a bit pale." Another adds, "Should have worn more wool." Then a third, dead serious, mutters, "It's the devil's phlegm again." You're not sure what that means. You're also not asking. The well itself isn't looking great. There's a suspicious scum floating on top of the bucket water, and someone's dropped a sandal in it. Again. You stare at the communal ladle hanging on a rusty nail. You can practically see the plague on it, yet in a few minutes someone will drink from it. That someone might be you. Because options are limited and thirst is relentless. You back away, choosing dehydration over public ladles, and keep walking. The village baker limps by, whistling a tune and balancing a tray of lumpy bread on his head. "You're looking warm," he says cheerfully. "That means the bad spirits are cooking out. Stay in the sun, let them bake." He winks and saunters off, clearly proud of his own metaphor. You sneeze in response. The pigs have escaped again. 2 of them trot past you in a blur of grunts and mud, one of them carrying a turnip in its mouth like a trophy. Behind them, a small boy gives chase. waving what might be a femur. This is not abnormal, just part of the background noise. In a weird way, the filth is comforting, familiar. It's your filth, your muddy little ecosystem. Your family knows which mushrooms not to touch, which puddles not to step in, and which hedges not to relieve yourself behind. The chaos is curated. Still, you start to realise how hard it is to stay healthy here. There's no such thing as isolating when you share a bed, a bowl, and often a cup with 3 siblings. You touch what they touch. You breathe what they breathe. If someone in the village gets sick, odds are most of the village will too. It's not if, it's when. You finally stagger back home. Your mother gasps and starts fanning you with her apron. Your brother rolls his eyes and mutters something about dramatics. Your father pokes the fire and tells you to lie down and sweat it out. Again, that's basically the go-to cure. But you've seen it now. The outside world isn't helping. It's worse than you remembered. The smell lingers in your nostrils like cheese left too long in the sun. Your blanket feels colder somehow. The fire crackles. Someone ladles you a cup of something vaguely warm and suspiciously grey. You close your eyes. The village will keep moving, with or without you. Chickens will still squawk, gossip will still swirl, and Marjorie will still be skinning things with alarming cheer. But for now, you curl under your scratchy blanket and try to imagine a world with walls that don't leak and streets that don't squelch. A world where you can get sick without involving every farm animal within a half-mile radius. You wake up drenched, not just a light misting of sweat. This is full medieval stew mode. Your tunic sticks to your chest, your hair is plastered to your forehead, and your blanket might as well have been dragged through a pond. This, according to your mother, is excellent news. You're purging the humours. Ah yes, the humours. The 4 sacred bodily fluids that medieval folks believed governed your entire existence. Blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. If they're in balance, you're healthy. If they're not, well, you're sweating in a damp hut while your aunt grinds something that smells suspiciously like crushed snail shells. In 1450, medicine is not about killing germs. It's about restoring harmony, bodily harmony. Everyone's obsessed with it. You're either too hot, too cold, too moist, or too dry. Sickness, then, is your body throwing a tantrum. So naturally, people try to coax it back into balance through an incredible array of unpleasant options. Your uncle bursts in carrying a bucket. Not a comforting bucket. The other kind, the leech bucket. And there they are, slimy, writhing, unapologetically enthusiastic about your ankles. Leeches are very in vogue, because if you've got too much blood, clearly the cause of your fever, the answer is to let it out. It's like spring cleaning, but with more bleeding and significantly fewer flowers. You protest, but your aunt clucks at you and says, "It's either this or another mustard bath." You're starting to miss the mustard bath. They press the leeches onto your skin with ritualistic flair. You lie very still, staring at the ceiling, as tiny mouths attach themselves with a determination that is, frankly, offensive. You feel a pinch, then another. The room spins slightly. You regret every decision that led to this moment, including being born in the 15th century. Historians still argue whether leeching ever actually worked, or if it just gave people something to do while waiting for nature to take its course. What's clear is that it was wildly popular. Even barbers did it. That's right. Your haircutter could also be your bloodletting specialist. No license needed, just a steady hand and a bucket. And if you weren't being bled, you might be sweating, or puking, or praying, or eating a carefully chosen mix of bitter herbs, honey, and ash, all tailored to your personal constitution. The idea of one-size-fits-all medicine didn't exist. Everything depended on your age, your star sign, even the time of day. Your mother appears with a bowl of something warm and beige. She tells you it's pottage. It tastes like sadness and boiled root. You choke down a few spoonfuls. Every meal you eat while sick is more about symbolism than nutrition. If it's bitter, it fights off bad humours. If it's sweet, it comforts your soul. If it's grey, nobody knows what it does, but someone's grandmother swore by it once. The village healer finally arrives. She's wearing a robe that was once green, now mostly brown. Her hair is in a nest of braids that contain more herbs than you've seen in your entire lifetime. She smells like thyme, wood smoke, and the unmistakable essence of damp forest. She examines you without touching you. That would be a bit too scientific. Instead, she studies your urine. Yep. Welcome to medieval diagnostics. She pours your urine into a glass vial, holds it to the light, swirls it gently, and then sniffs it. Sniffs it. She then mumbles something about mild choleric imbalance and declares you in need of a calendula poultice and possibly a prayer vigil. Maybe both, just to cover all the bases. She asks what phase the moon is in. No one knows. Your aunt squints at the sky and makes something up. The healer nods solemnly. A diagnosis has been reached. She hands your mother a bundle of dried weeds, a beeswax candle, and a strip of linen tied with string. You're not sure which is the cure and which is just ambience. Out comes the calendula poultice. It smells slightly floral, slightly rancid, and is spread generously across your chest. To draw out the heat, they say. You lie back, wondering if it's working or if you've just invented medieval aromatherapy. There's also talk of an enema. You pretend to fall asleep. Still, this whole spectacle is oddly comforting. People care. Everyone wants to help, even if their methods seem like a dare from a fever dream. In a world where death can arrive via a single sneeze, any action feels better than none. And the rituals make you feel less like you're fading and more like you're part of something ancient, messy, communal. You glance toward the fire. Someone's hanging a bundle of herbs above it, chanting a rhyme under their breath. Outside, a goat bleats like it knows something. Your body aches, but your mind drifts. You think of other people sick like you, down the lane, in the next village, across the hills, all of them wrapped in blankets, sweating through fevers, clinging to poultices and prayers. A distant church bell rings. Maybe it's a holy day, or maybe someone just died. The healer packs up her things and leaves with a final nod. Your family thanks her with a loaf of bread and a promise of eggs. No coin changes hands. Healing is often a favour economy, barter and belief. You feel the leeches squirm in the bucket beside your bed. You try not to think about where they'll go next. The evening light fades. Shadows stretch across the floor. Your breathing is still shallow, but the fever hasn't worsened. That's good, they say. You're stable. Not recovering. Just stable. In medieval terms, that's practically a miracle. You drift again. The smell of herbs lingers in your nostrils. The candle flickers. And somewhere in your half-sleep you swear you hear someone whisper, "He'll make it, if the humours are willing." You wake to the sound of clanging. Not bells this time, pots. Loud, determined clanging, as your grandmother parades around the house banging two ladles together. To chase off the fever spirits, she says, while your dog barks at her like she's finally lost it, which honestly is still on brand for 1450. Your fever hasn't broken yet, but the whole household's decided the illness might be spiritual, or astrological, or fungal, possibly all three. The only consistent diagnosis is that you still look pale and smell like damp wool. So now, the real show begins. The community response. See, getting sick in 1450 isn't just your personal burden, it's everyone's problem. Your family, your neighbours' livestock. When someone gets ill, the whole social machine creaks into motion, often more theatrical than helpful. Because in this era, health is a group project, and group projects are rarely efficient. First to arrive is the neighbour woman with the thickest accent in the village. No one knows what she's saying half the time, but she has 11 living children, which basically makes her a medical authority. She insists on making a tea from wild chamomile and something she calls cave mint. You don't ask questions, you just drink and hope it wasn't lichen. Next comes your great-uncle, the one with 3 teeth and 0 filter. He squints at you, leans in close and says, "It's the curse of the black-eyed toad. You stepped on a sacred toad, didn't you?" You shake your head. He nods sagely. "Of course you didn't. That's why it's working." He stays for an hour. The town's priest also visits. He offers a short prayer, sprinkles holy water, and mutters something about recent sin. He's pretty vague about whose sin might be responsible, but his eyes linger on your older brother, who refuses to meet his gaze. Interesting. Historians still debate whether these rituals were more about spiritual healing or just a way to control the uncontrollable. But there's no doubt. Illness invited ceremony. Every village had its own flavour of superstition. Some buried an egg under the sickbed. Others whispered to the hearth ashes. One traveller's account claims that in parts of Germany, people placed hedgehog spines on the patient's tongue to draw out impure thoughts. You're really hoping nobody here reads German. Word spreads. Soon, people are showing up with bundles of herbs, baskets of stale bread, and unsolicited advice. everyone has a cousin who cured their fever with cow dung or who nearly died from looking at the moon too long. They speak of miraculous recoveries and sudden deaths with the same tone they use to discuss weather. Matter of fact, unflinching. Outside your window you hear someone hammering. They're nailing sprigs of garlic and wormwood to the doorframe, a protective barrier. Against what? Spirits, the wind, nosy chickens. Honestly, it's not clear. But now your house smells like a vampire buffet. One of your cousins volunteers to sit beside you and read from a saint's life story. He can't really read, so it's mostly him making up tales about St. Eustace wrestling a bear. You don't correct him. It's oddly comforting. Your grandmother returns with a new potion. A thick paste of crushed walnut, vinegar, and blessed rainwater. You sip it. It tastes like regret. But hey, what's one more mysterious brew in the name of healing? This is the medieval equivalent of healthcare infrastructure. Not hospitals. Those are rare and mostly places people die in, not recover. Not trained doctors. Most of those exist in cities, and even then, their knowledge is often based on Aristotle, astrology, and wishful thinking. Your care team is your clan, your village, everyone you share land, space, and livestock with. When you get sick, they swarm, not always helpfully, but always earnestly. In an odd way, it's beautiful and exhausting. Even the kids help. A small parade of cousins, nieces, and that one neighbour boy who may or may not be related to you bring you offerings. A handmade doll, slightly cursed looking, a bowl of boiled nettle, no thanks, and a dead crow feather which you suspect was not meant to be gifted. At one point you hear chanting. Someone's doing a protective circle with salt and ash around the chicken coop. Apparently if the chickens catch your fever, the whole village starves. Speaking of chickens, they're not great patients. One sneaks into your house, pecks your foot, and vanishes again. No one stops it. No one seems surprised. You're starting to think that chicken is a witch. You drift in and out of sleep as people come and go. Your blanket is tucked tighter each time. More herbal sachets appear around the room. A carved wooden amulet is tied to your wrist. Someone adds a clove of garlic under your pillow. Your bed smells like a stew. And through all this, despite the absurdity, the smell, the noise, there's a strange sense of safety. The rituals may be random, the cures may be questionable, but the effort is real. These people believe in you, or at least they believe in their ability to do something about your sickness, and belief sometimes is half the battle, even if it involves snail paste. You glance toward the door as another neighbour peeks in. She holds up a pot of something steaming and says, "Best remedy I know, cured my cousin's cow of foot rot." You smile weakly and accept it. You don't have the heart to say it's probably just turnip soup. The next morning the house is quiet, not peaceful, just momentarily drained, like the whole building is pausing to catch its breath. You stir under your pile of wool blankets and straw-stuffed bolsters, blinking at the filtered sunlight leaking through the wattle and daub walls. Your fever's still there, lurking like an unwanted house guest, but it's steadier now. Less fire, more slow simmer. But there's no time to enjoy the relative stillness because today is the dreaded inspection. See, back in 1450, the local lord or town bailiff has a vested interest in your ability to work, pay dues, and generally not die in a dramatic, contagious fashion. If enough peasants fall ill, productivity drops, and that simply won't do. So they send someone to check up on the sick. Not out of compassion, this isn't a wellness check. It's closer to livestock management. You hear footsteps outside, heavy boots squelching in the mud. The door creaks open without a knock, and in steps the reeve, a lean, hawk-nosed man with a suspiciously clean cloak. He carries a wax tablet, a stylus, and an expression that says, "I'd rather be counting sheep, but alas." He eyes you like a farmer sizing up a wilting crop. Still breathing, he mutters, making a notation. Some colour in the cheeks, less vomit on the floor than expected. He pokes the edge of your mattress with the stylus, just to be certain you're not faking it. Because in medieval times, pretending to be sick is surprisingly common, especially if it means avoiding taxes, tithes, or hauling manure for 14 hours. The reeve interviews your mother. She gives a passionate rundown of your symptoms, including some you definitely didn't have. And then his eyes rolled back like a saint receiving vision, she says, which is creative. He seems unimpressed. He jots down something that probably translates to exaggerated for effect. Historians still argue whether these local inspections helped control disease, or simply documented its spread. What's clear is that they added an extra layer of anxiety to an already horrible time. Being sick wasn't just about survival, it was also about reputation. If your illness is deemed too suspicious, or your family too unlucky, you might be shunned, quarantined, or relocated. There are whispers of entire families carted to the edge of the village during pestilence years, left in huts to recover or not. And so, you smile weakly. Try not to look too sick, just a respectable level of unwell. After a few more scribbles and a glance at your urine flask, still sitting proudly on the windowsill like a cursed snow globe, the reeve grunts and leaves. Your mother exhales. She was clearly worried you might be marked as unfit or tainted. That could mean extra dues, or exclusion from communal meals, or worse, mandatory leeching at the monastery. Speaking of the monastery, yes, that's an option. Not a fun one, but an option. If you get worse and the local care proves insufficient, the next step is often the nearby religious house. Monks and nuns are the closest thing to professional caregivers in 1450. Many have herbal knowledge, access to clean-ish water, and, most importantly, a quiet place to lie in peace. Sort of like a hospice crossed with a chapel and a medieval pharmacy. Your mother whispers about maybe sending you there. You panic slightly. Because while monasteries do have medicine and books and a disturbingly high number of skulls in display cases, they also have rules. Lots of them. Silence, prayer, chastity, limited stew options. You'll spend your days being tended to by a novice named Brother Ulwin who smells like damp barley and lectures you on humility between spoonfuls of oat gruel. Also, rumour has it, they shave your head. You touch your hair protectively. Still, some monasteries are surprisingly advanced. They grow medicinal plants in cloister gardens. They brew salves and tinctures that actually help. They track symptoms, categorise illnesses and write things down. In Latin, of course, because nothing says healing like not understanding what's written on your diagnosis scroll. One particularly quirky fact. Some monks kept a book of dreams and hallucinations of the dying, believing they revealed glimpses of the divine. So if your fever makes you think the fireplace is whispering secrets, they might take notes, lots of notes. Back in your cottage, your mother decides you're not monastery-level sick. Yet. Instead, she brings out the big guns, the family relic. Now, every household has one. Yours is a chunk of bone. Possibly from a saint, possibly from a very holy sheep. It's been wrapped in cloth sprinkled with rosewater and hidden in a chest for emergencies. This qualifies. She holds it near your forehead. Everyone bows slightly. The dog barks once and then stops, as if even he knows not to mock the bone. This ritual doesn't cure anything, but it feels like armour. The Middle Ages are all about layers of belief, spiritual, herbal, communal. Each one adds another shield against death, or at least against despair. Outside, someone starts singing. It's a slow, slightly off-key hymn from the neighbour's daughter. She's 6. She's missing 2 front teeth, but she means it. And just like that, the tension of the inspection lifts. People begin to chat again. Someone puts on stew. The priest drops off a spare candle. You shift under your blankets, the sweat drying on your brow. Your breathing isn't perfect, but it's steadier. For now, you're safe. The reeve has moved on, the door is closed. And tomorrow, maybe no inspections, maybe just sleep. You sleep long and heavy. The kind of sleep where your limbs feel like logs, and your dreams drift through murky layers of memory and fever. When you finally surface, it's evening. Candlelight flickers on the walls. Someone's placed a bowl of broth by your bed, though it's more of a thin vegetable water with something ominously floating in it. You're too tired to care. But today isn't about reeves or priests or spiritual bones. Today is about something a little more primal, the body. Specifically, all the delightful, squishy, leaky, unreliable things your 15th century body is doing to fight off infection. And how the people around you try to help, often with wildly creative methods. Let's talk symptoms. Your throat is raw, your stomach keeps threatening betrayal, and your skin feels like it's been dusted with hay and regret. You're sweating in pulses. Hot, cold, hot again. Your mother wipes your forehead with a cloth soaked in lavender water, murmuring that lavender drives away the dark humours. Whether that's true or just an excuse to make the room smell nice is up for debate. Meanwhile, your cousin, recently promoted to local expert in medicinal mushrooms after reading one woodcut pamphlet, tries to convince you to eat a slice of dried fungus that looks suspiciously like tree bark. You pass. See, medieval medicine is all about humorism. Not the ha-ha kind, sadly, but the 4 bodily fluids: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. According to Galen, an ancient Greek whose theories still reign supreme 1,300 years later, your health depends on keeping those humours in balance. Too much black bile, melancholy; too much phlegm, you'll be sluggish and sickly; too much yellow bile, you'll be angry and probably have a rash; blood, well, blood gets blamed for a lot. So what's the go-to treatment for a humour imbalance? You guessed it. Bleeding. You hear the word whispered somewhere in the house, and your heart sinks. Enter the village leechman. He's not a doctor. He's not even a monk. He's a travelling physician with 3 things in his satchel: dull knives, cloth strips, and a jar of suspiciously active leeches. He smells like mint and mildew. And he is thrilled to be here. You're given a choice: knife or leeches. You choose leeches. You instantly regret it. They're placed under your arms and behind your ears, anywhere the skin is soft and the blood flow good. One attaches with a wet plop and begins its work. You don't look. You just stare at the wall and hum a hymn under your breath. Historians still argue whether bloodletting did more harm than good. Some think it relieved pressure and reduced fever temporarily. Others call it one of the worst medical fads in history. Either way, it was popular, especially if you could afford a fancy physician who bled you in different spots based on astrology. Yes, astrology. Your zodiac sign determined which vein should be opened and when. You're a Sagittarius. Apparently that means avoid bleeding from the thighs in December. Useful. After the leeches have had their fill, the man collects them carefully and says, "You'll feel light as a feather by morning." You already do, probably because you're now half a pint short. To replace your fluids, you're handed a medicinal tonic. It's a boiling mix of wine, pepper, ground sage, and a whisper of iron. You don't ask what the iron is. You sip. Your tongue goes numb. Your mother beams. That means it's working. Now the remedies keep coming. Every hour someone has a new idea. Onion poultice for your chest, hot brick near your feet, a necklace of dried fig and garlic to draw the poison downward. You lie there, basically a human salad bar, while your family debates whether it's time for a mustard plaster. You hope not. Last time, your cousin got blisters. There's also a brief experiment with sound therapy. Your great-uncle stands beside your bed and sings a low droning chant that sounds vaguely like a cow in distress. "This is the song of the bones," he explains. "It clears blockages. It clears something, all right. Your will to live." But here's the thing. Through all this medieval medical madness, your body is quietly doing its own thing. Fighting. Building antibodies. Sweating out toxins. White blood cells haven't been discovered yet, but they're on the case anyway, forming microscopic battle lines your ancestors will never see. And occasionally, someone stumbles on something that actually helps. Like the warm compress made from chamomile and rosemary. It soothes your aching joints. Or the barley water with honey that finally lets your throat relax. These little moments of comfort don't get celebrated, but they matter. You drift in and out of sleep again. In one fever dream, you're being chased by a talking leech who wants to open a tavern. You make him sign a zoning petition. It's unclear whether that's a metaphor for something or just the mustard fumes talking. When you wake, the room is darker, cooler. Someone's changed the linens. You're no longer trembling. Your breath comes easier. Your skin doesn't burn. It's not over, but something's shifted. Your body, despite the odds, is doing what it can. And so are the people around you. Even if their methods are odd, their intentions are earnest. Every herb tucked under your pillow, every bowl of broth, every half-sung chant is a vote of confidence in your recovery. And let's face it, being nibbled by leeches is kind of a medieval rite of passage. The next day starts with birdsong, or at least what passes for birdsong in a medieval village. A rooster with questionable pitch crows 3 hours early, a goat bleats like it's auditioning for a tragedy, and a distant church bell tolls so slowly it could lull you back to sleep. But something's different today. You feel less like a dying turnip and more like a soggy potato. Improvement. You sit up just slightly and nobody panics. That's a win. The village wakes around you. Doors open with creaks that echo through foggy alleys. Someone nearby dumps chamber pots into the shared ditch. Kids chase a chicken past your window. Life moves forward, regardless of who's sick or well. But you're not quite ready to rejoin the chaos. Today, you observe, and what you see is this. Being sick in 1450 isn't just your problem, it's everyone's. Your recovery, or failure to recover, ripples outward. Illness is communal. The entire village, whether out of duty or superstition or fear, becomes part of your healing process. Let's start with the kitchen. Your aunt, who hasn't spoken a kind word in a decade, arrives with a clay jar of something called bone broth, though based on the smell, the bone may have once belonged to something with tusks. She sets it beside your bed with a nod. Eat, she says, or die. That's her version of tenderness. Meanwhile, your younger sibling has been tasked with collecting clean straw to stuff your bedding. Clean is a generous word. It's mostly just drier, but the gesture is sweet. They come back smelling of hay and victory. And then there's the neighbour who insists on reciting psalms through your window, loudly. At first it's comforting, then it's just Psalm 23 for the fourth time. You consider pretending to sleep. He keeps going. You sigh. Communal care comes with communal quirks. Medieval villages function like living organisms. When one part suffers, the others shift to compensate. If you can't fetch water, someone else does. If your family's short on bread, the baker might send a stale loaf wrapped in cloth. You might even get a borrowed candle, precious light, for the long fevered nights. It's not always altruistic, sometimes it's about appearances. Helping the sick proves you're righteous, charitable, useful, and sometimes it's just practical. If everyone gets sick, the harvest fails. So there's pressure to get you upright again, even if it means feeding you experimental barley paste laced with boiled pine needles. Historians still argue whether medieval community care systems were rooted more in religious obligation or mutual survival. The truth is probably both. Either way, they're effective, if chaotic. One fringe tradition you witness today? Smoke purging. A neighbour lights a bundle of herbs, sage, thyme, rosemary, and one unidentifiable plant that makes your eyes sting, and wafts the smoke through your home. The idea is to drive out miasma, or bad air, which, to be fair, is not completely wrong. Stale air in closed spaces is bad for sick people. They just don't know why yet. The smoke coils through the beams, chases shadows, makes everyone cough. Your uncle calls it air cleansing. You call it a very fancy way to light dinner on fire. Then, from across the village, the bell tolls again. This one's different. It's a death knell. Someone didn't make it. The village pauses, heads bow. A name is whispered, and for a few minutes everyone feels the fragility again. It's a reminder. Illness isn't abstract. It's a daily visitor, and it doesn't always leave quietly. You lie back down, the stew-scented smoke still lingering in your clothes. Your body's on the edge, better than before, but not strong. This is the in-between time. The watchful waiting, as your grandmother calls it. Not recovery, not danger, just waiting. So what does the village do now? They start preparing for either outcome. If you recover, you'll need food, warmth, and gentle work to rebuild strength. If you don't, there's a whole separate set of customs waiting. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. A gentle tap at the door pulls you from darker thoughts. A young girl enters, barefoot, red-cheeked, nervous. She's carrying a small wooden doll dressed like a nun. It's a votive offering from the church. To remind you, she says, that St. Apollonia watches over those with fevers. Then she adds, she also had all her teeth pulled out, but I'm sure that won't happen to you. Great, very reassuring. But you accept the doll, because right now small comforts matter. Superstition, faith, habit, they blend together. The doll isn't magical, but it's a gesture. One more tiny stitch in the quilt of community that's keeping you from unravelling. Outside, the priest walks by, scattering something into the wind. Ashes, herbs, grounded hope. It doesn't matter. What matters is that he looked toward your house as he did it. Everyone's watching. Not in a creepy way, well, mostly, but in that uniquely medieval way that says, your sickness is our business. And whether they're praying, singing, boiling garlic, or just quietly waiting, they're all part of the treatment. Even the chicken who keeps pecking at your windowsill, she seems invested. You drift again, into a half-sleep filled with clanking pots and muttered chants. You hear someone fixing a leak in the roof, someone else sweeping near your door. The village is tending to its own. You're still sick, but you're not alone. You wake to a rhythmic thudding sound, soft, deliberate, and oddly comforting. It's someone kneading bread dough in the next room. Your mother maybe, or your cousin. Hard to tell. But the sound fills the house like a heartbeat. Life goes on, even while you're stuck in bed, hovering between sweat and shivers. The window's open just a crack today, letting in cool air that smells of wet earth and wood smoke. For the first time in days, you don't recoil from the scent. Progress. But today isn't about comfort. Today is about control. Or rather, the medieval obsession with trying to control what illness means. Because here in 1450, being sick isn't just a personal experience, it's a sign, a message, a riddle from God, or nature, or the stars themselves. Your fever might as well be a telegram from the divine. So while your body fights its own microscopic war, your community turns to something bigger, interpretation. First up, the village astrologer. Yes, there's a guy for that. He arrives wrapped in a cloak full of burn holes, carrying a sack of brass instruments that clink with purpose. He doesn't knock, he just walks into your room like a man with a cosmic appointment. He squints at you. Fever in a waning moon, Mars ascendant, Saturn in retrograde. Yes, this was inevitable. He pulls out a chart, a compass, and a piece of charcoal. Do you remember what hour you first felt unwell? You don't. He nods anyway, as if you said twilight during goat hour, and begins scribbling feverishly. Pun intended. To him, and others like him, your illness isn't random. It's part of a celestial pattern. Your body reacts not just to germs, though they don't know about those yet, but to planets and stars. Certain alignments predispose you to certain imbalances. Mercury in the wrong house? That's bad for digestion. Venus eclipsed? Watch out for phlegm. Historians still argue whether these astrological charts had any real impact on medieval medicine, or if they were just fancy guesswork. But the charts were taken seriously, especially by wealthier patients who could afford customized prognostications. Meanwhile, your family debates the theological angle. See, another popular theory? Illness is punishment. Not always for you specifically. It might be a generational curse, a regional sin, or just the general wickedness of mankind. Your grandmother mutters that this is because your uncle skipped mass last week. Your uncle argues that it's because the miller watered down the flour. Your youngest sibling suggests it's because you lied about feeding the goat. Thanks, buddy. The priest visits again, this time with a small vial of holy water and a prayer for healing and humility. He doesn't say it, but the implication is clear. Illness should lead you to repentance. You must not only heal your body, but your soul. But the most curious visitors today are the dream readers. Yes, that's a thing. 2 old women arrive, sisters maybe, wrapped in scarves and muttering to each other in a dialect you barely understand. They carry bundles of dried lavender and wormwood, and they smell like candles that have been crying. They sit at your bedside and ask, "What did you dream last night?" You hesitate. Your dreams were strange. One involved a goat in a bishop's hat, the other a flood of ink pouring from your fingertips. You say so. They nod solemnly. A sign of blocked creativity, one says, or possibly too much cabbage. They light a bit of resin on a hot stone and wave the smoke over your face. It will open your mind's doors. You don't argue. Frankly, you've seen worse this week. In medieval culture, dreams are portals. Portals to the soul, to the divine, or to hidden truths. People keep dream diaries. Dream manuals circulate. Handwritten guides that explain the meaning of snow, apples, spiders, or bleeding walls. It's half psychology, half mysticism, and completely accepted. Your strange dreams become part of your diagnosis. Maybe they mean you're improving. Maybe they mean you're cursed. Either way, the village adds them to the mix. And then there's the book. Someone, your aunt probably, brings in the big family Bible. It's heavy and smells of candle wax and dust. She opens it at random and points. "This," she says, "is your verse." It's about lepers being cleansed in the River Jordan. Not the most comforting passage, but it'll do. She reads it aloud while your mother makes the sign of the cross over your blanket. Somewhere behind her, your cousin is trying to remember the right order of planets in the celestial ladder of influence. You lie there passive while theology and astronomy dance around your pillow. And despite all this, you're still sick. Still aching, still weak, still unsure if the stars or your sins are to blame. But something's shifting. The interpretations, the rituals, the theories. They aren't really about explaining the illness. Not fully. They're about reclaiming a sense of order. About pretending that when the body falls into chaos, the mind can still find patterns in the noise. So you listen to the Psalms. You accept the astrology chart. You tell the dream readers about the floating ink. Not because you believe it all, but because here in 1450 belief is part of the healing process. And honestly, after everything, leeches, onion poultices and whispered chants, it's kind of nice to think your fever might be written in the stars. You're propped up now, upright enough to notice the smell of fresh bread in the air. Your body still feels like a bruised sack of grain, but at least your mind is clearing, and just in time too, because while the worst of your fever may be passing, the real work is about to begin. You see, in 1450, recovering from illness isn't just a matter of waiting around for your energy to magically return. No, recovery is its own medieval quest, and it's equal parts strategy, superstition, and social theatre. Your body's tired, yes, but your village, it's still watching. Because how you recover says a lot about who you are. This morning the healer stops by again. She doesn't bring potions, she brings instructions. You must eat something red, she says. You blink. Red is the colour of warmth, vitality, blood. If you eat red food, your blood will be strong. You glance around and see a beet. Not your top choice, but when in doubt, obey the beet. The theory of sympathetic medicine is popular. Heal like with like. Red foods for blood, yellow for bile, cold water for fevers. If your lungs are tight, you might be prescribed something that resembles lungs. Hello, boiled pig lung stew, appetite. These aren't random choices. They're rooted in centuries of observation and imaginative pattern making. Mainstream fact. Medieval medicine leaned heavily on the doctrine of signatures. This was the belief that God marked natural things with clues about their use. Walnuts look like brains, therefore good for your head. Liverwort has leaves shaped like a liver, must be liver medicine. Modern science doesn't support most of it, but hey, walnuts are good for your brain, so sometimes they accidentally got it right. You're not quite on solid food yet, but they bring you a mashed turnip with berries on top. It looks like someone dropped it, then tried to apologise. You eat it anyway. The village butcher promises some broth made from the calmest cow he's ever known, as if cow temperament somehow survives the cooking process. They mean well. You're told to sit in sunlight if there's any, but not too long or the humours might rise. Also, don't sleep during the day. It invites wandering spirits. But also don't stay awake too long, or your soul might get tired and forget to stay anchored in your body. Basically, be awake, but not alert. Sleepy, but not unconscious. Good luck. There's also the matter of spiritual cleansing. While your physical body mends, your spiritual one needs buffing. The priest suggests confession. Even if you're not guilty of anything specific, a general apology for existing might help. Clear the soul's pathway. You nod solemnly while trying not to yawn mid-sermon. Historians still argue whether these rituals were more psychological relief or spiritual necessity. Either way, the result is similar. You start to feel lighter. Not healthier, exactly, but less burdened. Like your soul has shed its sick day pyjamas and is trying on something a little more breathable. Your cousin brings you a tiny carved amulet, a rabbit with wings. For speed, he says, so you'll get better faster. You doubt medieval rabbits had any idea this was happening, but you wear it anyway. Winged bunny blessings can't hurt. Meanwhile, the community begins a slow process of reintegration. See, being sick also made you other. Untouchable. A little dangerous. Even with your family close, there was a psychic moat around your bed. But now that you're rising, they need to close the gap again. So someone tells a joke. It's terrible. Something about a priest, a donkey, and a leaky roof. But it gets a half smile out of you, and suddenly the room feels warmer. A few hours later, someone lets the baby into your room for the first time in a week. That's the real sign you're coming back. Babies are high risk. If they're not afraid to let the baby near you, you've been deemed likely to survive. Still, you're not out of the woods. The healer leaves you a bitter tea made from boiled moss and a warning. If the fever returns tonight, we may need to try stronger measures. You don't ask what that means. You've seen enough this week to know it involves at least one questionable ointment, a hymn in Latin, and possibly a goat. As night falls, you lie back and listen to the house settle. The fire crackles. A dog snores in the corner. Your blanket is scratchy. but it smells like sun-dried linen and safety. And your head feels clearer. Recovery is not a straight line in 1450. It's a dance. You wobble forward, lean back, take a side step, then 2 more forward. You eat weird things, hear stranger advice, and cling to whatever rituals feel right. The baker drops by before sunset and leaves a small loaf by your bed. It's shaped like a face. For protection, he mumbles. You nod. Bread face equals protection. That tracks. You're getting better. Not just in body, but in place, in position. You're not the village's sick one anymore. You're the one who was sick. Past tense, and that makes all the difference. You're no longer bedridden, but your body still feels like it's recovering from a tempest. Your legs are weak, your head foggy, and your breath sometimes shallow. Yet, the real challenge now is what the village calls the post-illness phase, the delicate period when your body's most vulnerable, and so is your social standing. Because in 1450, illness is not just a personal trial, it's a community event with lasting consequences. First, there's the matter of your contagion status. No one truly understands germs yet, but everyone knows that sickness can spread. So you remain under a kind of informal quarantine. Neighbours nod from doorways, children whisper behind hands, and even your closest friends keep a polite distance. You trudge outside one afternoon, careful to avoid crowds. The market smells overwhelming, a mix of fish, fresh hay, and something rotten, maybe a forgotten turnip. Your senses are dull, but you notice that people glance at you sideways, as if you're carrying an invisible plague. Historians still argue whether medieval communities effectively isolated the sick, or if these precautions were mostly symbolic, a mix of superstition and fear. What's clear is that social distancing wasn't a new concept. It was just wrapped in layers of ritual and rumour. The local midwife, who doubles as the village's informal health monitor, stops you. You're looking better, but don't overdo it, she warns, handing you a small pouch of herbs. This will help cleanse your blood. Inside the pouch are nettle, dandelion, and something called dragon's tongue, which you suspect is just a fancy name for a common weed. The mixture smells bitter, but you sip it anyway, trusting the midwife's knowledge. Meanwhile, your neighbours gossip. Did you hear? The blacksmith's wife was sick last winter, but she never took the holy water. Another adds, and they say the smith's son still coughs from it. The rumours weave a fabric of communal memory, everyone's illness a thread in a larger tapestry of health and hazard. Back home, your family insists you resume light chores. It'll strengthen your humours, they say. You're given a broom, not because the floors need sweeping, but because movement is medicine. No lying about, your mother scolds. You've passed the worst. You shuffle awkwardly, mindful of your weakness. It's a balancing act, pushing yourself without collapsing. Food remains a puzzle. Your appetite is fickle. Red foods, yellow foods, bitter teas, salty broth, each suggested by someone different, each accompanied by a tale of healing. One village elder swears by roasted onions placed on the soles of your feet overnight to draw out sickness. You try to keep a straight face. Sleep is another battleground. The line between restful and restless is razor thin. You dream of crawling vines, dripping water, and whispering shadows. The dream readers from earlier visit again, interpreting your visions with renewed urgency. The ink is drying, they say cryptically. Your soul is settling. You nod, not quite sure what that means, but comforted all the same. Meanwhile, the priest encourages you to attend Mass regularly again, not just for spiritual health, but social rehabilitation. To be seen in the church pew is to signal your return to normalcy. You listen to the hymns and watch the flicker of candle flames, feeling a strange mix of peace and exhaustion. Outside, the village's rhythm continues. Children play near the well, their laughter cutting through the late spring air. The mill wheel turns steadily, grinding grain as it has for decades. Life insists on moving forward, even for the sick and recovering. You remember the layered nature of medieval illness. The physical, the spiritual, the communal, each facet intertwined, shaping your experience and your place in the world. And though you're still fragile, you realise that surviving illness in 1450 is not just about fighting the fever. It's about navigating a maze of customs, beliefs, and people who all want to see you well again, but on their terms. You take a deep breath, wincing as a cough rattles in your chest. It's not over. Maybe it never will be. at least not in the way you expect. But you are here, you survived, and tomorrow you'll face whatever comes next. The sun rises, casting a muted glow through your small window, as if the world itself is hesitant to fully wake, kind of like you. Your body feels simultaneously stronger and oddly fragile, a paradox you're quickly learning to live with. But today, the focus shifts subtly, from survival to rebuilding. Because getting sick in 1450 wasn't just a physical ordeal, it was a social reset button, and now you must prove you're fit to rejoin the village's bustling, judgmental fold. You shuffle toward the hearth, where your family is gathered. The baker's wife brings in a small bowl of pottage, steaming and thick, filled with barley and a few bits of root vegetables. It's bland but nourishing, the medieval equivalent of chicken soup without the chicken. You eat slowly, savouring the simple warmth. But food isn't just sustenance now, it's a public performance. There are unspoken expectations that you eat in front of people, to show you're recovering, that you have the strength to rejoin the communal table. Refusing food might signal lingering weakness or even suspicion of laziness, a mortal sin in village life. You take a bite, and your mother nods approvingly. Small victories. Outside, the village is buzzing with news and gossip. The blacksmith's apprentice broke his leg chasing a chicken. The mayor's horse threw a shoe. The miller's wife swears by a new herbal remedy that cured her son's cough last month. It's a reminder that life's messiness continues regardless of your personal battles. As you step outside for the first time in days, the air feels sharper, bracing against your weakened lungs. The cobblestone streets are muddy from last night's rain, and the smells are an overwhelming cocktail of manure, wood smoke, and fresh bread. You inhale deeply, savouring the complexity. Your neighbours greet you cautiously. The butcher nods but doesn't shake your hand. The seamstress offers a faint smile but keeps her distance. Social protocols around sickness linger like stubborn fog. You remember the idea of miasma, the medieval theory that diseases spread through bad air. It's why the village keeps certain streets swept and why incense is burned in homes. Scientists today dismiss miasma, but back then it shaped every interaction. People avoided crowded spaces and fresh air seemed like a cure. You make your way to the church, where a small gathering has assembled for the morning prayer. It's both a religious duty and a social test. Showing up signals you're returning to your role and that you're no longer a burden. The priest greets you with a warm smile, holding a small piece of blessed bread called the antidotum. "This will guard you," he says, pressing it into your hand. You accept, feeling a mix of comfort and mild skepticism. Historians still argue whether these religious rituals provided real physical benefits or served mainly to ease psychological distress. But either way, the church's role in recovery was undeniable. It was the community's heartbeat. Later, the village healer offers to examine you again. She pokes and prods, her hands surprisingly gentle. "Your pulse is steady. Your humours are balancing," she declares. You try not to flinch at her mention of humours, those invisible fluids that medieval doctors believed controlled health. "Too much black bile? You'd better watch your diet." You ask her about the weird dreams you've been having, the floating ink, the goat in the bishop's hat. She chuckles softly. Dreams are messages, but sometimes they're just dreams. Don't read too much into them. Still, you can't shake the feeling that your subconscious is trying to tell you something. Maybe it's just the fever finally releasing its grip. That evening, your family gathers around the fire. The baby, now more curious than cautious, crawls toward you and hands you a crooked stick. You smile. Small, but real. Connection, at last. You realise that healing in 1450 wasn't just about medicine or prayers. It was about reclaiming your place in the world, piece by fragile piece. And as you close your eyes tonight, the villagers hum around you. You feel something precious. Hope. Morning comes again, but you no longer greet it as a prisoner of your own body. Instead, you trudge outside with a cautious optimism, your limbs still weak but eager to remember their purpose. The village is alive and noisy in a way that feels distant, almost dreamlike, like you're watching life from the edge of a swimming pool. You pass by the apothecary's shop, more a cluttered cabinet than a pharmacy, with jars labelled in faded ink. Some hold dried herbs, others contain mysterious powders. The apothecary waves, a knowing smile on his lips. You've come far enough that the thought of standing here chatting about poultices no longer makes you want to faint. The village is abuzz with chatter about the latest outbreak in a nearby town, another reminder that illness is a communal shared threat. You overhear a woman mention the plague doctors and their bird-like masks, which were meant to filter out evil air but probably just scared the neighbours. The masks have become a symbol of fear and resilience, two things that have come to define your own experience. There's also the matter of contagion tokens, small charms or marks some villagers would carry or display, believed to protect them from catching disease. You clutch your winged rabbit amulet a little tighter, wondering if it works in tandem. Inside your own home, recovery is a slow rebuilding of normalcy. Your family tries to keep you from overexerting yourself, but you know the balance is delicate. Too much rest invites weakness. Too much movement invites collapse. You decide to venture to the village well, a social hub as much as a water source. People come to gossip, trade news, and check on each other's health. You feel the curious, cautious eyes on you. Are you truly back? Are you still a danger? You fill your bucket, water sloshing noisily. A small child approaches, offering a clumsily made flower crown. It's a simple gesture, but it feels like a coronation. You accept with a grateful nod. At dinner, your family shares stories from the outside world. The baker claims to have discovered a new recipe for rye bread, promising it will make you strong as an ox. The blacksmith boasts about fixing the mill wheel ahead of schedule. Normal life continues, indifferent to your ordeal. But your body remembers. A sudden cough interrupts the evening calm, a reminder that recovery is not a straight line but a roller coaster. You hush yourself, trying not to cause alarm. The healer returns with a fresh batch of herbal concoctions, reminding you that healing is a process, not a moment. She adds a curious tincture made from willow bark, an early precursor to aspirin. It eases your aches, if only temporarily. Historians still argue whether medieval remedies like willow bark truly eased pain, or if their benefits were mostly placebo. Modern science tells us there's some truth, but the medieval patient wouldn't have known that. They took relief wherever they could find it. As night falls, you lie awake listening to the village settle, dogs barking, the occasional owl hoot, the soft rustle of wind in the trees. Your dreams return, less vivid but still strange. A tapestry of symbols that tease at the border between life and death, sickness and health. You think about the community you belong to, their fears, their hopes, their rituals, and how intimately illness wove you into this tapestry. You realise that healing was never just about your body. It was about reclaiming your place in a world that both feared and needed you. The winged rabbit amulet rests on your chest, a small talisman for the long journey ahead. The days stretch and fold into each other like the worn pages of an old manuscript, and you begin to notice subtle shifts, not just in your body, but in how the village sees you. No longer the sick one, you're now a story, a lesson whispered between neighbours, a cautionary tale with a hopeful ending. You join the marketplace one morning, walking with more confidence. The air smells sweeter today, or maybe it's just your senses sharpening after weeks of dullness. The chatter of merchants hawking wares, children chasing one another, and the occasional braying of a donkey fills your ears like a warm melody. But beneath the liveliness lies the constant awareness of illness's shadow. You overhear a farmer complaining about the bad humours in the spring air, blaming them for his cows' sudden deaths. A woman nearby talks about a mysterious rash spreading among the children. It's a reminder. Disease never really leaves, it just waits. Your recovery coincides with the village's preparations for the annual fair, a chaotic blend of celebration and superstition. The fair is a chance for everyone to reset, to wash away the bad luck of the previous year. There are booths offering charms, potions and amulets, alongside more mundane crafts like woven baskets and carved wooden spoons. You watch as a travelling storyteller performs, weaving tales of distant lands and heroic healers. His words spark a flicker of wonder in your still recovering mind. The medieval world, you realise, is as full of stories as it is of sickness. Back home, your family discusses bloodletting as a next step in your recovery. The practice is controversial even then. Some swear by it, others caution against it. Historians still argue whether bloodletting actually helped or hastened decline. The debate reflects a larger uncertainty about medicine itself, a field equal parts science, guesswork, and faith. You feel a mixture of dread and curiosity. Would you trust someone to poke your veins again? The memory of the last time makes your stomach churn. Meanwhile, the village midwife shares her own tales of illness and healing, reminding you that recovery is a shared journey. She tells you about a young woman who survived the plague only to be ostracized for months because her hair turned white overnight, a visible mark of trauma. You think about your own scars, invisible but just as real. One evening, as the sun dips below the horizon, you sit outside watching the sky bleed orange and purple. The cicadas hum their evening song, and the world feels both fragile and fiercely alive. You clutch the winged rabbit amulet again, feeling the smooth stone warm in your palm. It's a reminder that even in a time when sickness was a group project, hope was still an individual act. You've come a long way, but the journey is far from over. The seasons shift imperceptibly, as if the earth itself is taking its time to decide what to do next. You notice the chill creeping into the morning air, a reminder that winter will come again, bringing with it new challenges and fears. But for now, you stand firmly on the ground, steadier than you have been for weeks. Life has settled into a rhythm of cautious optimism. You participate in chores with renewed vigour, carrying water, tending the small garden patch, sweeping the floor. Each task feels like a victory, a step away from the shadow of sickness that still clings to your mind. Outside, the village prepares for the harvest festival, a time to give thanks for survival and bounty. The air is thick with the scent of apples, freshly cut hay and wood smoke. Children run through fields, their laughter piercing the autumn air like bright notes in a minor key. You join the communal gathering where villagers share stories and songs that have passed down through generations. Their voices are a patchwork of joy, sorrow and resilience, echoing the very experience you've lived. Among the traditions is a curious custom, the cleansing dance. Villagers form a circle, holding hands and move rhythmically around a bonfire. It's meant to chase away lingering illness and bad spirits, a ritual blending pagan roots with Christian faith. You hesitate but then join, feeling the warmth of the fire and the pulse of the crowd. Historians still argue whether such rituals had any real effect on health or were simply psychological balm. But standing there, surrounded by your community, you understand their power. Afterwards, the healer approaches with a new tincture, a mix of honey, garlic, and something she calls the breath of the forest. She explains that it's believed to strengthen the lungs and ward off future sickness. You sip the bitter liquid, grimacing but grateful. Your dreams continue to flicker with images, old symbols and new hopes intertwined. You remember the crooked stick the baby gave you, the winged rabbit amulet resting near your heart, and the prayers whispered in the church. The village feels like a living, breathing organism, sometimes fragile, sometimes fierce. Your illness was a wound, but also a thread weaving you deeper into its fabric. You think about the communal nature of sickness in 1450, how getting sick was never just an individual problem. It involved family, neighbours, healers, priests, and even strangers. Everyone played a part, willingly or not, in the dance between health and disease. And though the fear of falling ill again lingers like a shadow, you now carry something stronger: knowledge, community, and a quiet resilience. As the festival's fires die down, you find a moment of peace, a breath held between the past and whatever future awaits. The cold wind whispers through the village, carrying the scent of damp earth and dying leaves, as if the very landscape is exhaling after a long, tense breath. You wrap your cloak tighter and walk slowly, savouring the feeling of movement without pain. Your body still carries the memory of sickness, but your spirit feels lighter, more grounded. In this quiet moment, you reflect on everything that brought you here. The fear, the rituals, the strange remedies, and the stubborn hope. Getting sick in 1450 was a group project indeed, a shared crisis that tested every thread of community faith and knowledge. You think about the Black Plague that still lurks in the shadows of history books, the smallpox that burned through populations, and the countless unnamed illnesses that shaped the world. Disease was a force that no single person could face alone. Your place in the village is no longer defined by weakness but by survival, a testament to the resilience of both body and community. You smile, feeling the warmth of the hearth inside your home, the comfort of familiar voices and the steady pulse of life moving forward. As night deepens, you listen to the soft sounds around you, the crackle of firewood, the distant hoot of an owl, the gentle rustle of leaves. The world feels vast, mysterious, but also tender and real. Historians still argue about the precise causes and cures of medieval illnesses, about how much was myth and how much was medicine. But what remains undeniable is the human experience, the shared struggle, and the moments of grace found in the darkest times. You close your eyes, the winged rabbit amulet resting against your chest, a symbol of hope and protection through the centuries. Tonight, as you drift into sleep, remember that sickness was never just about the body. It was about community, trust, and the fragile, beautiful thread of life connecting us all. Now, let's wind down gently. The fire's warmth fades into a soft glow. The village sounds grow distant, like a lullaby sung through time. Your breath slows, your muscles relax, and the worries of the day drift away like autumn leaves on a quiet stream. You are safe here, cradled by history's gentle hands. The fears that once gripped you loosen their hold, replaced by a calm understanding, a whisper that even in the hardest times healing finds a way. Rest now, knowing the world turns onward, carrying stories of courage and connection. Tomorrow is another page in the book, but for now, close your eyes, breathe deeply, and float softly into dreams. Sweet dreams.